Welcome to Wisdom Trek with Gramps. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, and we are on day 2510 of our trek. The purpose of Wisdom Trek is to create a legacy of wisdom, to seek out discernment and insights, and to boldly grow where few have chosen to grow before. In today's Wisdom Nugget, we'll continue our journey through Psalm 35, focusing on verses 11 through 21 from the New Living Translation. In this portion of the psalm, David shares deep anguish over betrayal and unjust accusations. His words are raw and honest as he pleads with God for justice. Yet even in his pain, David demonstrates trust in God's ultimate sovereignty. Let's begin by reading Psalm 35 verses 11 through 21 together, and then we'll unpack it verse by verse. Malicious witnesses testify against me. They accuse me of crimes I know nothing about. They repay me evil for good. I am sick with despair. Yet when they were ill, I grieved for them. I denied myself by fasting for them, but my prayers returned unanswered. I was sad as though they were my friends or family, as if I were grieving for my own mother. But they are glad now that I am in trouble. They gleefully join together against me. I'm attacked by people I don't even know. They slander me constantly. They mock me and call me names. They snarl at me. How long, O Lord, will you look on and do nothing? Rescue me from these fierce attacks. Protect my life from these lions. Then I will thank you in front of the great assembly. I will praise you before all the people. Don't let my treacherous enemies rejoice over my defeat. Don't let those who hate me without cause gloat over my sorrow. They don't talk about peace. They plot against innocent people who mind their own business. They shout, "Aha, aha! With our own eyes we saw him do it." Now David begins his section in verse 11 by expressing his frustration and heartbreak over false accusations. Malicious witnesses testify against me. They accuse me of crimes I know nothing about. This verse paints a picture of injustice, with witnesses intentionally lying to harm David. Being falsely accused is one of the most painful experiences, as it attacks both our character and our integrity. In verse 12, David continues, "They repay me evil for good. I am sick with despair." David isn't just being mistreated. He is being hurt by people he once treated well. The betrayal was personal and it cuts deeply. His despair shows us how devastating it can be when those we've cared for and helped turn against us. These verses remind us that even the most righteous people can face slander and injustice. But instead of seeking revenge, David brings his pain to God, trusting that God will see and will respond. When we experience similar trials, we can find comfort in knowing that God is aware of the truth, even when others misrepresent us. David's anguish intensifies in verses 13 and 14 as he recalls his past kindness toward those who now attack him. Yet when they were ill, I grieved for them. I denied myself by fasting for them, but my prayers returned unanswered. David's care for these individuals were genuine. He mourned and suffered and even fasted on their behalf, showing his deep compassion and concern. Yet despite his heartfelt prayer and sacrifices, they now repaid his kindness with cruelty. In verse 14, David adds, "I was sad as though they were my friends and family, as if I was grieving for my own mother." These verses reveal the depths of David's love and loyalty. He cared for those people as if they were part of his family, and now their betrayal feels like a personal attack on his soul. This part of the psalm resonates with anyone who has experienced betrayal, especially from someone close. It's a reminder that even when our kindness is met with hostility, God sees our efforts and our pain. David's example encourages us to bring our heartbreak to God, trusting him to bring justice and healing. David describes this behavior of his enemies in verses 15 and 16. "But they are now glad that I am in trouble. They gleefully join together against me. I'm attacked by people I don't even know. They slander me constantly." These enemies not only betray him, but delight in his suffering. They join forces to attack him, and their slander seems relentless. What's even more painful is that some of these attackers are strangers, people with no reason to hate him. In verse 16, David continues, "They mock me and call me names. They snarl at me." This imagery conveys the intensity of the hostility that David faces. These aren't just mild disagreements. His enemies are openly mocking and ridiculing him, like predators circling their prey. The depiction reminds us that opposition often feels isolating, as if the whole world is against us. But David's response isn't to retaliate. Instead, he continues pouring his heart to God, trusting that God will vindicate him. His example encourages us to resist the urge to fight in anger and bring our struggles to the only one who truly understands. In verse 17, David cries out to God, "How long, O Lord, will you look on and do nothing? Rescue me from these fierce attacks. Protect my life from these lions." This heartfelt plea from David reveals his frustration and his longing for God to act. He feels as though God is watching, but not intervening, and he is desperate for deliverance. David's honesty here is both relatable and inspiring. Sometimes in our lives, we wonder why God is silent in the face of injustice and suffering. David's prayer reminds us that it's okay to bring our questions to God. He invites us to be honest about our struggles while still placing our trust in God's timing and sovereignty. In verse 18, David makes a vow. "Then I will thank you in front of the great assembly. I will praise you before all the people." Even in his distress, David expresses confidence that God will deliver him. He promises to acknowledge God's faithfulness publicly and to give him the glory for his rescue. This shows us that praise and trust can coexist with our cries for help. Even when we wait for God to act, we can hold on to the assurance that he is worthy of our gratitude and worship. David returns to describing his enemies in verse 19. "Don't let the treacherous enemies rejoice over my defeat. Don't let those who hate me without cause gloat over my sorrow." He pleads for God not to let his enemies have satisfaction of seeing him fall. Their hatred is baseless, and their desire to see him suffer is unjust. David's plea highlights the dependence on God's justice to silence those who oppose him. In verse 20, David describes the wicked as relentless schemers. They don't talk of peace. They plot against innocent people who mind their own business. This verse emphasizes the malicious intent of David's enemies. They aren't just passively opposed to him. They actively plan harm against the innocent. Their disregard for peace reveals the depth of their corruption. Finally, in verse 21, David recounts their taunt. They shout, "Aha, aha! With our own eyes we saw him do it." This mockery is particularly painful because it is based on lies. His enemies accuse him of things he hasn't done, seeking to undermine his character and reputation. This unjust ridicule is a reminder of the devastating power of false accusations. In these verses, David's transparency reminds us that we can bring every aspect of our pain and frustration to God, whether it is betrayal, mockery, or false accusations. God hears and cares about what we're going through. Psalm chapter 35, verses 11 through 21 gives us a window into David's heart as he wrestles with betrayal, slander, and the silence of God. His words are raw and honest, yet they are also filled with faith. David doesn't hide his pain or frustration, but he continually turns to God as his refuge and source of justice. This passage reminds us that we can trust God with our deepest hurts. When we face injustice or opposition, we don't need to take matters into our own hands. Like David, we can bring our struggles to God, knowing that he sees, hears, and will act in his perfect timing. As we reflect on these verses, let's be encouraged to trust God amid life's challenges. Let's commit to praising him as we wait for his deliverance, and let's hold on to the hope that he is faithful to rescue and vindicate his people. Thank you for joining me today on our Wisdom Trek. Until the next time, may God's wisdom guide your steps, and may his peace fill your hearts as you trust in him. And if you found this podcast insightful, please subscribe and leave us a review. Then encourage your friends and family to join us and come along with us tomorrow for another day of Wisdom Trek, creating a legacy. Thank you so much for allowing me to be your guide, your mentor, and most importantly, I am your friend as I serve you through the Wisdom Trek podcast and journal. As we take this trek of life together, let us always live abundantly, love unconditionally, listen intentionally, learn continuously, lend to others generously, lead with integrity, and leave a living legacy each day. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, reminding you to keep moving forward, enjoy your journey, and create a great day every day. See you next time for more daily wisdom.